people? Hope everyone is good. Hope you're all doing good. We're here now. This is it. We're at the playoffs. It's time. 46 game season, the long season of the championship is gone. It's finished. And I want to talk about something. I've got a real big topic for this video. Something that personally helps me a lot. Helps me understand myself, how to deal with things. And it's the idea of, and I've seen this everywhere on social media about these guys and these players and this team as a whole, as a failure. I've seen that word a lot, that Leeds United have failed. And it made me think about myself and things I've done this year that, relegation, been part of something, not achieving a place in the table which you wanted to, failing academically. And I'm thinking, so does that make me a failure? And I remember something, an interview from Kobe Bryant, where he talked about failure. And he said, failure isn't a thing. It's not real. In order to fail suggests it stops. You think of a book, the book ends, it's a happy ending, everyone's great, but it doesn't end. The story ends, but the book continues, And he made the example of Snow White and how the end of the book, everything's all great. It isn't all great, because a week later, that Snow White and her husband have had an argument and he's on the couch, right? The point is, it doesn't end. It's how you react to this current situation, how you take it into the next step. And that's the same with this season. That first part of the season is finished. You were not where you wanted to be, but it's only a failure if it ends. If you give up, if you don't turn up to the playoffs, no one goes. You can stay off the coach. You're in the next stage now. And through these kind of situations where you didn't get what you wanted, you will have learned a lot. You have to be willing to learn a lot. You have to understand what went wrong, so then in the next part of it, you can get that right. And that's about what I've been speaking about taking responsibility and accountability for mistakes, taking accountability for not doing your job as well as you could have. If you learn from that and continue into the next stage, it's not a failure because it's continued. And even if we were not to win in the playoffs, continuity and taking everything we've learned this season from the results we got, which were not what we wanted, you can take them into the next step. And then it continues. It continues to go on. It stays going. It's not stopped. It's continuing. So the failure doesn't exist. And that's what I bring back to me, where I've done so many things that are considered a failure. Then actually, I feel like I've learned so much as a person. And I've learned how to do things. I've learned from people that know much more about football than me. I've learned so much about confidence and what it needs to be successful, that in a way, through those failures, I feel I'm more equipped now to go and be successful. Does that make sense? So that's the kind of mindset I have in these situations where 46 game season, 25 or 26 of them wins were unbelievable. They were outstanding. We didn't get the first bit right. We didn't get the end bit right. And Kobe Bryant mentioned he got asked about his championships and his medals. And if he didn't have them, would it be considered a failure? He said, no, it'd be considered a disappointment. And linking that again to the team and the team, that would be a disappointment if we didn't go up. But then he said, it's only a failure if I stop. I didn't win a medal one year. Why didn't I win that? I can look and I can understand, I can analyse myself as a person and as a player as to why I didn't win that. So then I can come back next year from taking that responsibility and accountability and winning. And knowing what it takes to win and putting that into practice and getting better. And it all comes round. It all makes sense, because the idea that after this everything stops is just not true. We were a team last year in a higher league that didn't hardly win a game of football. And this year we're a team that is winning games of football. And we're a team that looks set. We're a team that has players. We're a team that is in a good position to continue what we're doing. So actually then, what happened is, when we went down, that was considered a failure, but then it continued, right? So you could argue now, given the change of ownership, the players we have, the young squad we have, the potential investment, the people behind the club, you could argue that now we're in a better position to go up and sustain going up than we were before. Do you know what I mean? So through defeat, through disappointment, doesn't mean it's the end, because it can get better. We're talking about an athlete here in Kobe Bryant who is one of the best athletes of all time in terms of winning mentality, and even he, after the season, looked at himself and took it on himself. Why didn't we win? He took it on himself. He took that responsibility on himself. And if every player and manager and person does that and takes that responsibility on themselves, it doesn't almost matter about the entire thing. It matters because each individual is then, improving and understanding what it takes to win. Because for example, Kobe Bryant mentioned about his leadership. I weren't as good as leadership. I weren't a good teammate. These are things that you can look at and go, that's right. Then you will improve and you will get better and you can keep going on. And this is what's important to me. You can't just stop and give up. You can't just say, yeah, it's done, we're finished, we're the worst. Bad right now and we're all disappointed. But there is next time. As long as you accept what the mistakes were and you can keep as much as you can together and build on it and bring the right people in together, you can all take out these key points and understand what needs to improve and understand what needs to get better. And that's where success comes into it. That's where the real gold and the real triumphs and the real tournaments come into it. And the perfect example is that under Marcelo Bielsa. Our first season wasn't failure because what we did was we kept most of our squad, barring 3 or 4 players. Kimaru, for example, and we built on it and we understood and took accountability for what went wrong, both the manager and the players. And from that accountability, we won the league. So yeah, I know it's a bit random, but just going into these playoffs, it's something that for me is important, that we actually understand the situation we're in and react well from what happened and learn from what happened and take accountability from what happened and come out and achieve what we can achieve. These players have to be extremely motivated and have a dying will to improve from mistakes and get better. That is so important to me. Accountability is everything. Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's won MVP in the NBA and is one of the best athletes, said similar thing. He said, do you get promoted every year? No. Right, so every year is your work a failure. And he said, there's no failure in sports. There are good days and bad days. Some days you're able to be successful, some days you are not. Some days it's your turn, some days it is not. That's what sport is about. You don't always win. Michael Jordan played 15 years and won 6 championships. Are the other 9 years a failure? They're not, because through those disappointments, he was managed to improve and get better, and that's why he did win the rest of the championships, because each time he did fail, he continued and learned from that and got better. And that's my entire point. We have to take accountability as a team. We have to understand as a team that this isn't the end. And that's why Farker and the presser spoke about the responsibility, and also remember the fans and how they give the players kind of an understanding at the end of the game that we are still here. We do still believe, even if it might be tough, even if it might be copium, we want to. And these players now need to understand that by owning what happened and accepting it, you have all the chance in the world to do better and improve. And that's really important. That is everything when you think about it. If everyone's blind and they don't see the issues, no one will improve. And I know the manager, for whatever reason, personally, I wouldn't have said that in a press conference about it's all on the players. But from that perspective, so much of it is down to those players. Those are the superstars. You can only train a team. You can only set up a team in training. How they perform on the pitch and how they learn from defeat. How they learn from defeat is down to them. You can tell them everything they need. Of course you can. But how they learn from defeat, if they're willing to learn from it, if they look at themselves in the mirror and accept the mistakes they made, good. If they don't, there's nothing as a coach you can do. You can tell them and give them all the information you want. There's an expression in football called analysis paralysis. Paralysis by analysis. It's over-exaggerating everything, overdoing everything, giving so much information that actually the players don't understand any of it. You've got to look at themselves and look at the mistakes that were made. And like the best athletes ever, like in Kobe Bryant, maybe deep down he did think it was the coach's fault. Maybe you think the coach should have done things better. But he understood the role he had at the team, and he understood how much of a leader he was, and he understood how important he was. Without him, he knows they couldn't have won it. And that's the same here. These players have to look at themselves, even if they might think deep down in their mind that I thought the man should have done this. You have to take responsibility as the athlete. You have to take responsibility in order to learn and develop. If you don't do that, you don't learn, you don't develop, you don't get better, you're stuck in a rut, you're stuck in your own hype, you don't go up, you go down. Listen to what some of the greatest athletes of all time said. They're the biggest critics. There might be other people that they think should be better. At the end of the day, they still look at themselves and they still use themselves being bad or not as good as they want to be as their main motivation to improve. As their main motivation. Whether they think the manager's good enough or not doesn't matter to them. Because they have to look at themselves. And that's why they come back each year better and better. And that's what we have to do. And that's what each player has to do in this situation. Whether the manager needs to change things or not, the reaction from the end of the season and how we were can change and it can get better. It has to get better. But the players have to take acceptance of what their performances were. They have to. They have to understand what went wrong and they have to be willing to change it. And then they will get better and they will improve. I know this was a bit different. I know this was a slightly different kind of style and topic, but failure is something that I'm trying to deal with through my own experiences. And listening to stuff like that and understanding it and listening to a top athlete talk about it and how they deal with it really helps you understand who you are and what you can actually get from it, you know? And that's key for me. That is important. Like I said, it's something that's helped me deal with my failures. They're actually just disappointments and things I want to improve on. And I genuinely feel like from doing that, from the failure, it is continuing. I'm not giving up. I'm keeping going, which means I feel like I'm in a better position. I feel like I've improved since the start of the football season. I feel like I'm learning more because I've accepted my mistakes, or I'm trying to, and it's tough. I could never do that as a player. There's always someone else's fault. Never mind. And I'm man enough to accept that. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think. We're all trying to improve. We're all here to improve. We're all here to try and get better. We all want to be successful. What does that look like? What does that feel like? We all have to learn. We all have to accept when it isn't right. I love having discussions and listening to some of you guys' comments who put loads of like text. I love it. I love understanding like that's going deep into your brain and you're putting that out there. I love that. Real thinking. So yeah, thanks for everyone who comments stuff like that. I really appreciate it. I'm just ready for these playoffs now. And again, I'm so at peace. Whatever happens, happens. Let's just get it right. We go through, amazing. Talent we have. These players have accepted what's happened and moved on. We can fly. That hasn't happened. We just don't have enough. We have to go into next season with the mentality of that we will change and we will get better. But yeah, either way, this is football. This is sport. This is the game. But yeah, I appreciate everyone. Apart from people that are very mean. But anyway, yeah, shout out to everyone, legends. I appreciate everyone. I'll see you guys in a bit. Let's do this, yeah. Peace.